Henry VIII used to be strong, active, and full of life. He was one of England's most powerful kings, known for his bold decisions, his 6 marriages, and his break from the Catholic Church. But his final years were nothing like the life he once lived. By the end, Henry was overweight, in constant pain, and couldn't even walk on his own. His body was falling apart, and his moods were getting worse. People at court were afraid of him, not just because of his power, but because of how badly he was suffering. So how did it come to this? In this video, we'll explore how Henry VIII's life ended, slowly, painfully, and far from the glory he once knew. In his younger years, Henry VIII was everything a king was expected to be. He was tall, athletic, charming, and well-educated. He loved music, hunting, dancing, and showing off his strength in sports like jousting and wrestling. People admired him. He seemed born to rule. Henry also had big plans for England. He wanted the country to be powerful and respected across Europe. He spent huge amounts of money on wars, castles, and clothes. He even broke away from the Catholic Church and started his own, the Church of England, just so he could divorce his first wife and marry Anne Boleyn. But behind all the greatness was a man who was growing more demanding, more impatient, and more dangerous. He ruled with absolute power. If you crossed him, it could cost you your title or your life. For years, Henry's energy and ambition made him unstoppable. But his choices, his lifestyle, and his stubborn pride would eventually catch up with him. What started as small cracks in his health and judgment would grow into something far worse and impossible to ignore. The turning point in Henry VIII's health came in 1536 during a jousting tournament, one of his favorite sports. He was 44 years old and still trying to prove his strength. But that day, something went terribly wrong. Henry fell off his horse and was crushed under it. He was unconscious for 2 hours. His leg was badly injured, and it never healed properly. From that moment on, everything changed. The wound became an open sore that often got infected. It caused constant pain. Doctors at the time didn't know how to treat it well, and over the years, it only got worse. The injury made it hard for Henry to stay active, and as he moved less, he began to gain a lot of weight. He started eating even more, drinking heavily, and avoiding exercise. His once muscular body became swollen and weak. His waist reportedly grew to over 50 inches. This wasn't just about looks. The extra weight made his injuries worse, and his body began to break down. The pain made him angry and unpredictable. People around him had to be careful with every word. The strong, confident king of the past was slowly disappearing, replaced by someone trapped in his own body. As the years went by, Henry's health continued to fall apart. The wound on his leg stayed open, often leaking and smelling bad. Some people even said you could smell it from across the room. He had to have it drained regularly, which was extremely painful. Many historians believe he also suffered from other conditions, possibly diabetes, gout, heart disease, or even a form of syphilis, though we may never know for sure. What we do know is that he was often in terrible pain. This pain changed him. He became moody and unpredictable. His temper grew worse, and his decisions more dangerous. He stopped trusting people. Friends were suddenly accused of betrayal. People who had served him for years could be sent to the Tower of London, or worse. At the same time, he started showing signs of deep sadness and fear. He worried constantly about having a son to carry on his name. He feared rebellion, betrayal, and death. Even his wives weren't safe. Henry's once sharp mind was clouded by illness, pain, and paranoia. He stopped going out in public. His days were spent in heavy chairs, surrounded by doctors, servants, and guards. By now, he was no longer England's bold young king. He had become someone else entirely, someone weighed down by his past, his power, and his own failing body. By the early 1540s, Henry VIII was almost completely disabled. He could no longer walk without help. His leg ulcer had grown worse and was now infected much of the time. The pain was constant. Every step hurt. Some days he couldn't even stand. To move around, he had to be carried in a special chair or rolled through the palace in a wheeled cart. His once active lifestyle was gone. Now he was stuck in rooms that smelled of medicine and infection. He wore padded clothes to ease the pressure on his body. His mood continued to darken. He shouted at servants, accused friends of lies, and even had longtime allies executed out of fear or anger. Court life changed with him. Where once there had been music, parties, and energy, now there was silence and worry. People whispered. Some feared getting too close. Henry still had absolute power, but it was like standing near a storm. You never knew when it would explode. He ate heavily, but his body could barely handle it. His legs were swollen. Some reports say he may have had kidney problems or heart issues by this point. His doctors were helpless. No one could tell the king what he didn't want to hear, not even about his own health. The great king who once inspired fear and respect was now feared for a different reason. Because he was suffering, and no one dared to stop him. By January 1547, it was clear that Henry VIII didn't have much time left. He was in his palace at Whitehall, barely able to move. His body was failing. His leg was badly infected. His organs were likely shutting down, and he was constantly tired. Some accounts say he drifted in and out of sleep, confused and groaning from the pain. Still, his doctors didn't dare tell him he was dying. In those days, telling a king he was near death could be considered treason. Henry had to ask several times before anyone admitted it to him. He called for his confessor and received the last rites, the final religious ceremony before death. The palace was quiet. His staff were afraid. His advisors began preparing for the end. On January 28, 1547, Henry VIII died. He was 55 years old. There was no great speech, no dramatic final words. Just silence. The man who had once ruled with such energy and force passed away slowly, weak and alone in his bed. But even in death, Henry remained complicated. He left behind a kingdom full of tension, uncertainty, and questions about what would come next, and whether anyone could truly fill the space he left behind. After Henry's death, his 9-year-old son, Edward VI, became king. But Edward was just a child, and powerful advisors quickly took control. The court that had once feared Henry's every word now moved fast to reshape the country. Henry had changed England forever. He had broken from the Catholic Church, closed hundreds of monasteries, and taken massive amounts of church land and wealth. But he also left the country divided between Catholics and Protestants, conservatives and reformers. His death left a huge power gap. The years that followed were filled with conflict, short reigns, and religious battles. Edward ruled only a few years before dying young. Then came Henry's daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, each with their own vision for England. Henry was buried in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, next to Jane Seymour, the wife who gave him a son. But his legacy isn't just about politics or religion. It's about the man himself, strong, proud, and feared in life, but broken and suffering in the end. The image of a powerful king slowly falling apart stayed with people. And even today, Henry VIII is remembered not just for what he did, but for how terribly he died. So why should we care about how Henry VIII died? Because his story shows what can happen when one person has too much power, and no one can say no. Henry made huge decisions that shaped England for centuries. But in the end, even a king couldn't escape the consequences of his choices. He lived with too much food, too much control, and too little resistance. And his slow, painful decline was a direct result of the life he built and the fear he created. It's also a reminder that great power doesn't protect you from human weakness. Behind the crown and the palaces was a man, one who got sick, made mistakes, and suffered like anyone else. Henry VIII's death matters because it brings us closer to the truth. It strips away the myth and shows the man underneath. And maybe that's the most powerful lesson of all. Even the strongest ruler can fall, and sometimes the fall is the most painful part of the story. Henry VIII ruled with strength, fear, and ambition, but in the end, he died slowly, painfully, and completely alone. His life was filled with drama, power, and unforgettable decisions. But his death reminds us that no one, not even a king, escapes the weight of their actions. What do you think? Was Henry VIII a victim of his own choices, or just a man crushed by time and illness? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that reveal the hidden human side of history, make sure to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more powerful moments the world almost forgot.